Hello, my friends. It's a little chilly here in Oakland. I'm actually here in my parents' basement, the place where I started making records when I was a teenager. It's kind of nostalgic. How's everybody doing today? The Discord asked a lot of questions this week, so I'm gonna try to accumulate a few things. I also think that I'm gonna have another producer on because there's a lot of producer-related questions that have been coming up recently. Actually just texted Tyler Johnson about having him on again. A few other producer friends. Gonna do that thing. How's everybody doing? Oh, it's so great to see the Discord crew come on here. I see John there.
Hey, what's up, dude? How are
There he is. There he is.
Good, man. You got the beanie on.
Is
Is it chilly in Los Angeles like it is here in Oakland? That low to mid 50s winter that we love in California.
I know. I'm heading tomorrow to New York where it's 22. My dad said, and then London after that.
Yeah,
like 42.
And the sun will go down at 3:05 in the afternoon in London. I can't remember.
Oh, really?
What
That's how it works.
But actually, probably is today's the shortest day of the year. Is it tomorrow? I can't remember. 20th or 21st.
Tomorrow. It's my grandma's birthday. That's how I always remember it.
Castelli or grandma? That's
97
that's
tomorrow.
Age. I'd love to get anywhere close to there. How
Anywhere
you doing, man? Are you
close.
pretty much wrapped up for the year? Have you been? Yeah,
I am. Just sent my last note past, and then I got errands to do after this and kind of wrapping up.
Nice, man.
Fly out tomorrow morning.
Emails yesterday and today of some final deliverables for something that's going to be released right after the new year. So same sort of thing, just going to do a little maintenance stuff this week and actually work on some song demos and kind of, it's like the difference between mixer world and producer writer world is that I have some things I'm mixing and delivering before everybody leaves for the holidays. And then also now it's time to go have some fun and get into some song demos and some friends that just writing stuff, batting around ideas, just purely for fun. No business people are being like, when is the demo for there's none of that. It's all just me and the artist, which is, I actually really enjoy this time of year. For many reasons, but partially for that reason, which is all the business people kind of fade into the background. And then I can just like call my friends and go, what are we making? What do you want to do? You want to hang out? I got a week between Christmas and New Year's. You want to make stuff?
Yes.
Like it's just on some pure fun.
Yeah. The cook up. That's kind of on the tip of where my head's at right now because I am wrapping up today and I'm excited about a vacation, 3 weeks. It's going to be in total, I think, or 2 and change, but, got off the phone with Dale Becker just now to do, diligence on the last question of last week, which was like, what's the conversation between you and Dale of what to do next year, or what I should do differently next year. And I called him on the way back from a physical therapy appointment I was just at, which was crazy, by the way. I don't understand what this man does, but he fixed my jaw. Like I'm like happier because my jaw opens up more. He did some vagus nerve stuff. He's a protege of Tyler Johnson's father, who's like a world-renowned physical therapist. And I've been seeing him for a couple of years for my back.
Nice,
this morning was profound, truly profound. I found myself getting happier to the point where I didn't even know I could be this
wild
happy.
How much physicality affects our psychology, whether it's being in shape, cardio stuff, strength, posture, or just always. And whenever I talk about tennis, I like to sit up a little bit straighter, not arch the back, but
Yes. He was talking about, anyway, I could talk about this forever, but anyway, on the way home, I called Dale to check in about what we talked about end of last week. And he texted me just a flow state of thoughts. And then I called him based on the thoughts and we chatted through. But at the end of the conversation, which was 30 seconds before we jumped on here, I was looking at my gear and I was like excited. I was like, I want to mix today. Like I got pumped because he came up with something that I never would have thought would be the answer to what should I do differently this next year. His thoughts were, and I can read the notes, but listen to old mixes that you've done. Like listen to the old work when you were in your 20s. He specified one thing. He said that there's an era, was kind of my like turning point of getting onto bigger records. I was using a Pro L version 1 preset. Let me read it out loud. It's the Dance and Electronica preset folder, Dubstep Punchy Control Lows MTK preset. And he said there's nostalgia in what your mixes sounded like through that chain. He's like, don't go back to the chain. That's not the point. The point is there was an era of mixes that when you were using that, and as my mastering engineer, that's very funny because he's going off. I used to send the unlimited mix and then that preset so he can back it off, into whatever he was doing, but he can start from where I had it. And that's how we would send our masters at one point with the
I just did that with him actually.
And screenshot.
Sent him a mix and was like, here's my version and here's the exact settings of the few things that would be put on it.
Yes. So we used to do that. So he has a vantage point into this. And his point was that though technically you have come worlds since, and he's also saying that you're not doing this, but to double down on this more as I kind of come into conversations with you and other people about how I want to just kind of give the client what they want mentality and kind of be okay with the 5%. He's saying, fuck that mentality and go back to the 20-year-old danger that made you you. And you should push that direction even more because it stands out. What did he say? He said, make mixes people have to chew on. That should be the expectation. Delivering what is expected for the sake of ease is what mixers past their prime do. Be the thermostat. This is amazing. Fight the industry's desire to make you a machine and just output. Craft and design. Continue to be artisanal. People want to work with you because of who you are. And I'm like, fuck bars. Okay. Like just put me between the speakers right now and mix a fucking album in a day and a half because that turns me up so
this is the great
much.
Dance that people are getting to watch you and I both evolve in this where, there's no one way to do it. And more than just that general thing, which is kind of true for everything, there isn't one way to do what you do, whether you're a mixer, songwriter, producer. You can't please all the people all the time. You can make the choice to go, I'm going to go be more client pleasing, do less of my own taste, and really just deliver for the people as I expect they want it. And you can have a lot of work, and that's a path to go on. You can go more toward the other end of the spectrum, which is I want to put my stamp on everything, and it's not going to be for everybody. And I'm going to live with people not wanting some of my stuff. And it's not even choosing one or the other, but like having that dance is a big part of what we do. And I think it's, one of the reasons that I think it's so great that we're doing this is people get to see this now over the course of a couple of years of your mentality and how you're wrestling with both those things. And you're never going to be one or the other. You're always going to be like, I want things to sound a certain way. And also I want to get hired for the biggest records. Well, I can deliver the things that the A&Rs want. And generally what A&Rs want is the thing they already know works and what they're expecting. And they don't really want unexpected stuff. Accept that occasional time when they get something unexpected and they love it, and then you're a genius. So it's a tough dance, and wrestling with those two things I think is really beautiful and it's really important. And I love to see the smile on your face where you're like, I want to go take 2 days to mix a song. I want to go Eric Valentine, Mutt Lang. Give me a week. I'll do.
Yeah. He was talking about the times where I was slaving for hours over the same mix and coming back to it. It's like, I don't really want to go back to that time, but I know what he's saying. Like, I kind of want to, I think it's also a study of what. So for example, I can be candid here. When I was in Long Island, and mixing when I didn't even know I was supposed to mix. Long story short, we've probably talked about this on episode 2. When I was working at my studio in Long Island, people would say, I would say, who's mixing this record? And they're like, aren't you mixing it? I'm like, I don't know how to mix records. I'm just a recording engineer. And they were like, well, we don't have a budget, so you're mixing it. So I had to figure out how to mix. I never had the intention of being a mix engineer. I liked recording. Obviously now we know that, there's one without the other. It doesn't really exist anymore. So I would start over. I would do all those things. But I forgot when it was, a couple of years ago, I was sitting with Josh, my assistant, and I went back to some old Long Island mixes, some pop punk stuff, some folk records that I was doing, some hardcore records, like all live instrumentation. That's what I was doing. And how crazy and tight they sounded. I was mixing very tight. I was influenced by Turbin. I was influenced by Chris Lord-Alge. I was doing this kind of fast attack, very like bright and energetic, but contained type mixing. Then enter Tony Maserati and my mentorship with him. He taught me how to loosen things up. He taught me how to like slow the attack speed on things and like let the groove, like let the low end fall. And I was like, oh shit, like this is the kind of records that I like listening to. I want my mixes to sound like that. And he pushed me into that vein, like really extreme. And then I've gone even further down that. But Serban was like my first love of what mixing sounded like. It was really tight, really dense, and like precise. Who is Jill Scott? It's just fucking perfection and bright and sizzly, precise. And then I thought, okay, after I left Tony, let's dial into both worlds and take the inspiration of both of what they do. But I've leaned way heavier still into the Tony approach of kind of keeping things loose, just because that's what I was doing for so long. And then last year, I kind of made a choice to go back into a little bit more of the tight thing. And that translated to a few records this year that I'm really excited about. So I think that's probably where I'll wind up next year, which is a little bit more like precise sounding, because that's actually where my heart lies. And now knowing and learning that kind of loose, open, not as compressed sounding thing, I can still bring that in when it's right. But for example, on a mix that I was doing yesterday, I had like the drums really fucking punchy and loud and focused. And I was compressing drums, even things that I don't normally do. And I'm just fucking around with the idea. And then having all the synths and ambience like way back, like creating this depth of perception that doesn't want to be all compressed forward with a mix bus compressor like the rough mix had. But you get the punch and the apparent feeling of energy that the rough mix had based on this, but then you can use that more precise, like surgical tools on certain other parts. Like I said, the synths and the piano sample and the background vocals where they're clean, but they're back. And you kind of get this thing. Anyway, there's a kind of a happy medium, and that's the push and pull in the creative dilemma versus the first dilemma we talked about, which is like, where do you want to lie? Like artisan versus, commodity. Or
the other
like
challenge with all this is taste is going to change too. Because right now, pop records, hip hop records, whatever's chart topping is sounding a certain way. And the cycles of sonics and cool are moving more quickly because of the internet and social media. So maybe in a year or two, you'll have to shift in another direction. And that's part of what we do. And it's part of what keeps it interesting, honestly.
I think I feel like I shifted. I'm really pumped about some of these, some of the feedback I've been getting from really trusted ears that would be very honest with you. I'm asking for very honest feedback about the SZA mix, the low song, and crazy that she debuted with every song in the Hot 100 this week, and the one I'm talking about is like number 17. So it's like a first hit in a while. To be honest, I haven't had a hit like in quite a bit. It feels like in top 20 is not a bad way to enter. But that mix from amongst friends is like, okay, like that sounds different. Like I'm not saying it's like the best thing. It sounds different and it works. And I want mixes that sound different and work. And it's going to be, I have a very good feeling about that record. And I think there's going to be some mass love on it, if not already has that. And when I hear that, it feels like me. It feels like danger to me. It feels like, oh, I didn't just do the thing I thought I was supposed to do. It felt like the thing I couldn't help but doing. And that's what I will always strive for, that when the time is right. I don't always think the time is going to be right for that. But because of that level of artistry and what I believe that record could do, I wanted that out. It's kind of selfish, but I wanted something different about how that low end hits. How is it clipping? Is it clipping through my analog chain now? Or is it a plugin? Is it a sound? Is it a sound we've heard before? Or is it another sound that people are going to maybe want in their low end? And that's what I'm getting from Dale, because he mastered that record. And he's like, more of that. Like, more of that when it's appropriate is what I'm getting from your point of view in our conversation. It's never going to always be appropriate.
And remember also, yet again, as you talked about last week, the way that she wanted the vocals to sit with the reverb and how much she wanted the reverb to exist was uncomfortable for you. And yes, maybe still is a week later. I don't know, but it's like, that's no,
now I love, we talked about that. Now I love it because I made it my own version of what that drenched reverb sound is. I didn't do just what maybe I would have thought you would do for a verb like that. I tried to figure out my own way of controlling it.
There's an element of getting out of your comfort zone. The collaboration aspect was really important. So there were, for whatever reason, there were a bunch of questions this week. I thought it might be good to answer the question, but really go through some case studies of it, which is going to be a little simpler for you and maybe a little more complicated for me. So there are a lot of people asking, okay, Jon, you know, there's a general question, but some of them specifically about, okay, you mix SZA and you say that you did it last minute. Your friends were the producers and that's how you got roped into it. How does that work business wise? So a lot of people are like, okay, so your friend just says, hey, will you mix this thing? It's a short deadline. How do you agree on payment and terms, and how does that work? And how do you, I assume the implication for a lot of these people being, how do you not get taken advantage of with somebody just saying, hey, can you mix this for me? It's on a quick deadline. We'll figure out the business later. I think, as perhaps maybe I can explain or you can explain, at a certain level, you know, you've talked about this before, you have a rate, you have business people, you have a standard, a fee and the terms and the points and all that sort of stuff. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an understanding, especially if you've done things with these producers before, that you have a rate, you will get paid the rate, and you guys all just trust that your business people will work it out as you always do, since you pretty much do one consistent thing. Obviously you do a lot of things. It's not selling you short, but like you mix a song, it is this rate. Here's the studio fee. Here's my fee. It's recoupable in this way. Here's the points. I assume that's pretty much how it is for you. So you know, maybe you can talk through the SZA process of the first song, or who calls you.
I have two. I have two versions of this.
Producer calls you. You say, I'm in, obviously, I would love to mix SZA. Is it immediately, I'm going to get paid for this? Do you email your manager? Do you connect managers? No.
That answer is simply no. I'll go through it all.
Yeah, so.
Yes, it happened. Well, my manager knew as soon as I got it because he was the second person I called.
Okay, so
first person I called.
Who called you, and maybe, you know, if you can name names, if you can name numbers, that's great too.
Yeah, Rob, her engineer and one of her producers, who basically delivered the entire album. He's a fucking rock star. Called me, and I was
3 days before the album was delivered.
He was like, No. In entirety, like 6 days before the album's delivered, but the album was delivered. Short yes, like 3 days later. Yes, but less than a week before it's delivered. Let's go with that. And I didn't think about money conversations doesn't come up at all. Nathaniel, my manager, didn't reach out about money or a deal until I delivered all the songs I knew I was going to be delivering, which was 4, knowing 3 were going to make the album. One was a maybe. I didn't tell him to connect the dots until we were done and the track listing was decided.
To do that is because you have a reputation, you have a rate. You're not going to get screwed out of the deal.
I'm going to hit you with the opposite side of this, because you don't know this story and this just happened. And we're not going to talk about the artist that this happened on, but we're going to talk about the fact that this just happened 4 days ago or less, 3 days ago, and it's announced. We know we have a #1 album with SZA, and the same day I find out that an album I'm 6 songs deep on, I no longer am mixing the project. And it was not communicated from management or the artist's team. It was told to be communicated through one of the producers, who has no idea why or who else they're going to. They were just requested for stems to go a different direction. And still nobody has contacted me. So 6 songs deep. And it's the same situation. This came through a friend. So I didn't connect my manager. So I now have to figure out what's going to happen after 6 songs. And my manager is on that. It is his fight to fight now. It's not my fight to fight. But I also said yes to a similar level to me of fanship. We talked about it last week. Of artistry that I was like,
name it, but yeah.
Yes. So it sucks. Yeah. I am hurt about the way that the business went down, because I love where we were going, and I've got no feedback except for, yo, this is dope. Can we wrap this up? And that was a month ago. We never wrapped it up, and I guess it's not dope anymore. So however the communication decided to flutter out, that makes me talk about this in a different way. I don't know what's right and wrong. I trusted both parties, and one went great and one still hasn't gone anywhere. So I don't know what the right answer is. All I would say is lean towards solidifying the business early on, if possible, but never be too firm on that to not jump in when excited about a project. I should be more clear as well that I rarely do this, but I did a SZA mix on spec because I was asked to show her what I can do, because she doesn't know my work theoretically, even though I did mix her voice on the Doechii Persuasive song that she jumped on. She doesn't really know my work. So I was asked if I would, and because it's SZA, and because I was very confident, and Rob was very confident in the record being low, I said yes to that, and I knew I was going to kill that record when I pressed play on the rough mix. So I was confident, he was confident in me. I rarely do that, but I was down to do it for this.
That's very interesting. I did not expect to get that answer from you, but there's a couple of things that I think about that, and then maybe I'll give some examples as well. It is for those that are working with local artists, don't have a manager, trying to figure out these deals. The good and bad news is, no matter what level you're at, even the Jon Castelli, LWMR level, whatever, you're going to run into these challenges. And how much, when somebody calls you, do you go, great, I'm not going to agree anything until I talk to my manager and we have a deal worked out? That's like, obviously, it's an aggressive statement to make. But also, if you just go, yeah, sure, send it over, I'll start now, we'll deal with the business later. No matter what level you're at, you can get not screwed, but just things, if you don't connect the dots. I mean,
at the end of the day, I'm going to get paid for my time on this project. It's going to take a while, I'm sure, and it's going to be a hiccup, but I'm not angry. I'm not going to call anybody out for it. Like, I can see that version of an engineer, like, fuck you, fuck this, I can't believe that happened. It's like, this is bound to happen. I probably handled it wrong by trusting in the situation without having like a direct communication with the manager first and that side of the team. I would put it more on me than anybody else. I do think it was handled poorly. I think it's very unprofessional. But I'm not going to hold this against anybody more than myself. And I would like it just to be a lesson. I probably wouldn't have talked about this live, but it should be a lesson if that's a question people are asking.
You just said there, the first thing you said was, all right, how can I maybe handle it a little bit differently? Knowing that this isn't something that's your fault. It sounds like bad communication. Obviously, don't know all the details, but given what I know about you and what you've told me about the project and your relationship, this is not your fault on the business end. But you go, okay, if it's 95% them, what's the 5% that I can control? How do I adjust a little bit in the future? And it's one of the things that I do, which is, I don't have a mix. I mean, I have a mix rate, but I mix and I produce and I executive produce, and sometimes I get pulled into finish, and sometimes, there's a lot of different roles that I play. And depending on the type of call and who it's from, that dictates how quickly I get other people involved, like my management. The most like friendly example I've probably mentioned before, my friend Tyler Brown, who used to run Psycho, and he was One Direction, Little Mix, and A&R for all those records to do with him. Yeah. He's a manager now. He's got amazing, from Renown to Moon Willis. He's got a bunch of great people. So when he calls me and says, I have this thing for you, I just say yes. Because I've made so many records with him. Yeah. The business has never gone bad. They're always interesting. It's a pleasure to work with him. I want to make records with him for as long as he and I both want to make records in whatever he's doing. He's a manager. He's a publisher. He was A&R. And so I just say yes. And what that means sometimes is, and we talk about business openly, but I just say, yes, send me stuff. I'll start working, because it's always a pleasure. 100% of the time, it's been worth doing. And I want to just promote that relationship, and it's a blast, and he's my friend and all that kind of stuff. There are other people who I'm like industry friends with. We've had the conversation about friendships before, where people call me and I go, great, send me the music, I'll loop in my manager. That's the first thing I say, where they go, hey, we got this thing, can you da-da-da-da? The budget might be it. And I go, awesome, and send me the music, I'll loop in my manager. Because I know that them having that conversation legitimizes the thing that I'm doing. That's probably what you're talking about with this current project, is you've worked with the artist in the past, you have a relationship, and you get it, and you're like, yes, of course I'll do this, because of course you will. But the one little twist you'll probably put in the future is, great, let me just loop in manager, just so everybody, even if you don't go, here's a deal, here's the terms, all that kind of stuff, just so we go, the business people are talking, everybody knows what's about to start. And without saying it, you go, you know that I have a rate. I'm a, you ever says, but like, I'm a Grammy nominated this. I've had these hits. You know that I have a rate. This is what I do.
Yeah.
Now the business people are talking, so everybody knows it's happening. There's something about that, and we've had some long lives about business people. This is really ultimately the reason to have a manager more than anything else, is it just legitimizes the process of business and then takes it off your plate when it needs to, which is for most of the time. But it's very challenging.
It doesn't fix.
No.
It doesn't fix the emotional roller coaster of, as I stated earlier, that you find out the same day you have a #1 album come out, and then you find out you lost the gig that you're most excited about of the year, or lost, or whatever the language is. It sucks. It sucks. Like, I'm definitely salty. Like, it doesn't leave a good taste. It's bitter, but it is part of the game, I guess. And it's not about money. Like I said, I will get paid, but it's so much more than that. The money is like, that's business. It'll get sorted. It's on a major label who I have a really good relationship with, so they're not going to screw me over. That part about, I'm not worried about getting screwed over. I'm always worried about the you want your the work. You want the care, the love and care that goes into these things.
The only reason I harp on the business stuff so much is because I think a lot of people watching this are in that either early stage where they're working with their friends and working with local artists and don't have a manager, don't have full-time attorneys, that sort of thing. And that's just to be frank, it's a much more challenging position to be in, but you still got to be mindful of it. So don't think that at some point you get these business people and then it all goes away, because you can be at the highest level and still things change and you're like, I should have had that communication, and what are we doing, and why aren't these, and so it gets frustrating.
Yep.
So I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you're able to share that, and successes and not failures, but just sometimes things don't work out, and that sucks. But
at the end of the day,
you got 4 minutes on
all good.
It ain't too bad going to the end of the year. That's not too bad at all.
No, I'm stuck.
Any other people asking about, you talked about the Dale thing a little bit, reflections on the end of the year, things you're moving away from, things you're wanting to do more. We talked about a little last week. I know you, it looks like you're selling your Unfair Child. I think people are curious about gear choices and moving away from some stuff. You got any thoughts on that overall?
Yeah. I didn't use any outboard gear on SZA. I was moving too fast. The vocal chains were there, and I didn't want to commit stems like I normally would for her, because Rob has a thing dialed in. So I was working off of his and backing things off and adding things and whatever. I didn't feel the need to put outboard gear on that at all. The Unfair Child is a great piece of gear. It is just something that I'm not using all the time. I want it to go to a good family. It's spectacular. I think if I was recording and producing more, I would keep it. It does a thing to vocals that it's really special. That I have the VT7, and I think that the VT7 might be slightly more special to my taste. So I'm going to keep that one instead. I want to see what it's like to mix in the box again. I think my man, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't have an answer. I just am doing it, and it's working. I'm mixing a whole album right now, which we're gonna have to finish first of the year. I think we got through 12 of 14 or something in the last week, and I didn't use any outboard gear except for the VT7 and my mix bus. Therefore, I don't need to have it. If I don't use it on every mix, it doesn't belong in the rack. And I'm not that kind of guy that's like, oh, this, what this thing needs? It needs the obscure, use a plugin. Like, so many files are coming and going. Oh, we got a new version. Oh my God, the amount of arrangement changes on SZA in the last fucking 3 hours. Like, no way am I going to rebounce stuff through the VLCs or the Fairchild. Like, things were changing all the time. And that's what happens at this level in these last minute, like, ridiculous time frames. Things change. And I don't want to even have an inkling to be like, oh, I got to recall that. All of a sudden, the stress level is influencing the next steps of the project. And I'm sure some people are better at that than I am, but that's what my brain would say at 3:30 in the morning. Oh, another vocal, and now I got to rebalance it. I got to redo my clip gains. You know, there's so much that goes into what I do on vocal leveling that if I got to do that again and then recommit the gear, and then I sometimes do clip gain pre and post the gear, it's so much work. So fuck it. This album still went number one. I don't need to have it on Fairchild on her vocal to make the album go number one. And I think that's the separation that I'm looking for. I do think it is a great piece of gear and it's very reparative to bad signal. So if you tend to get bad recordings, maybe the production level that you're at is maybe poor bedroom recording a lot of the time, I think stuff like the Unfairchild helps. That source material. That's why I still have 4 VLCs and I do have my VT7. If a vocal is recorded poorly, the VT7 really does save a lot. So I would want that in my arsenal to some degree. I just don't need all
it sounds
that I have.
Sort of two things are happening at once. One is it's just workflow, and the nature of your work is
it's workflow.
There's a necessity for a lot of speed and adjustment and last minute things, which having lots of outboard gear that you need to print through makes that a little more taxing and stressful. And it's also something we've talked about, which is the role of the mixer finisher is not as much like complete sound design. Like you said, where you got this is a thing, like the vocal chain and the sound is pretty much there. You then have to go fit those things in and do the beautiful, subtle things that you do to make it sound finished and make the low end sound huge and make enough space for everything. Yeah. But the idea that you need to really shape something with tube gear all the time is maybe getting less and less. But as like you said, as a tool, having a tube compressor that's saturating a little bit, compressing is a really great tool for creative people if it works with your workflow. And it sounds like it maybe doesn't as much anymore.
It doesn't as much anymore. I was using it as parallel compression on drums. I don't parallel compress drums. I was using it for a tonal thing. The tonal thing is something I can get by EQing because I have ears and I can hear what it's doing. It just did it fast for me. It was in my template, but then I have to rebalance it. And then when someone sends a new kick pattern, then I have to change the kick pattern track and then go rebalance the Unfairchild. And it's just like an extra 6 minutes that I don't need to be worrying about. Now 6 minutes might not sound a lot, but if someone needs something within 10,
there is like, a lot. As we talk about a lot, the ability to be a part of the process that's really, really smooth and people can feel a lot of confidence in is often, it's a very underrated part of the process. I mean, making things sound good is important, obviously, but then being super easy and quick with it and hassle-free is going to get you rehired a lot. And it sounds like that's a big part of what helped you get 3 others on the SZA record. You did the first one, spec, sounded great. They're like, great. We have like 48 hours. Can you do more? And you're like, I'll figure it out. And you just get it done. Yeah.
I would have done 8 more. Like I would have done half the record in that period of time. I was pumped. I was just like, had this adrenaline and I felt like I had this like acuity of focus that I was just like, bring it on. Like, come on, I'm ready for another one. And it was, none of them took longer than 2 hours to get back to Rob and the team to get notes on. It was like really fast. Hey, what about this? All right, I got more time. Like, let's work on this. Oh, she likes this, but doesn't like this. Okay, cool. Let's do it. But to get the ears on it really fast in that kind of turnaround, there's also something about that, the collaboration, the back and forth. One of the things Dale said that I didn't say earlier that's in the text is if you're getting no notes on a mix, you're not challenging the artist or the listener enough. Like this whole V1 thing that everyone's like, oh shit, no notes. It's like, did you nail it? Or was it just a little bit better so they said it was okay? Like, did you try to push the song somewhere else? And I like that. I like trying to push this. I don't mind 6 versions because we're trying shit. I don't care. I'm working with a homie right now, young, the 23-year-old producer. He's so fucking talented. And we're on mix 10 on something. He's like, man, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I'm not sorry. I'm not upset. I'm not the least bit frustrated. I haven't even thought about the number. You want to keep trying different things? Let's try. Because we're getting somewhere. And this mix 10 on a thing that we just finished on this project is actually really amazing. is nothing like my first mix and nothing like the rough mix. He had to come over to play me a couple of references and be like, this is what I want it to sound like. And I'm like, oh, well, none of these mixes sound like that thing. And it took till version 9 for him to go, maybe it should be more like this thing. And it was like a Dead Mouse record. It was like some absurd, like nothing like the record that we're making, but there's something about it. And I understood. I was sitting on my new chair off to the side. He was playing songs and he didn't even say, this is what I want. I was just like, oh, can I sit down? And then I just did a 20-minute sprint. And then it was like, oh, okay. That was mix 10. And now we're delivered to Dale to master at mix 10. We didn't have any notes because we had an unspoken understanding of what it needed to be that didn't exist. And that would never have happened if I just kept bringing back a small version of like a small improvement, because he didn't want what he had. Sometimes you don't want what you have. Now, the juxtaposition to that is mixing for Circuit recently, which is like, it just sounds great, you know? Like I know what to do to something like that as well, because I've worked with him, but it just sounded great. What the fuck am I supposed? I'm not reinventing anything, but I am improving, but subtle improvements. And it was the same week I was doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, well, I get a taste of both, and I'm not trying to change Circuit's vibe. It's been working for a long time.
Jesus.
Pretty well.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I don't think as a mixer the goal should be either way. The goal should be, let's do what makes sense for the process. And by the way, you're not always going to get it right, and that's okay too. You know, sometimes the artist is like, please don't fuck with my shit, make it slightly better. Or you, even without saying it, you get a track from Circuit, the guy knows sound design, it probably sounds pretty incredible coming to you. So just do the subtle things that you know he's looking for or that he's gonna like, and then
vocal mostly.
There's another artist which is like, I don't know what this is supposed to sound like, and you're like, I got you, let's take our time. And that's a really fun process too. And again, part of the skill of doing what we do is figuring out how to quickly read one versus the other, or shift mid-process where you're like, oh, I thought they wanted this, but they want something else. Let me go do that thing for them. And that just comes from experience, really.
And I think yes, definitely experience and taste, like we brought up earlier. But on the gear side of that conversation, the gear didn't help me get to the end result with this, with these examples that I'm talking about. So therefore, you have to consider the importance of them. And let's also talk quickly about the Unfairchild, the VLCs, the VT7 that I talk about, my mix bus.
We're talking about tube gear. Very high with outboard tube.
Tube gear. We're talking about tube. Exactly. So when you think about that, you have to think about gain staging and headroom. A lot of tube gear, if you hit too hard, gets mushy. So you have to care about these things, and that takes,
which is going to smooth things out. But if you smooth too much, then everything has no peaks, no transients, no sharp edges, which are important for music.
Yes. So you have to care, right? So when I mix a song with gear, which is most of the time, I really have to think about my gain staging, which takes time. It takes a setup. Like when I have an artist in the room, for example, that's not what I want to be doing. And if there's an artist in the room, maybe I won't, I'll hopefully get a few minutes before to get that time to get the gain staging right. Or maybe my assistant will do it, because that's not fun, but that is necessary when using tubes. So I only want to do that with the things that I really think improve the mix, which is what's on my mix bus. That to me is what really will take a mix and make it more finished sounding if I hit it right. And what I mean by hit it right is where the tubes just do a little bit of love and they're not squishing things.
That's fantastic.
So it takes more time. So when I speak highly of gear, I want everybody to know as I go into the next year and I don't talk about gear anymore, the gear is there to be cared for. And you can't just slam things into tubes.
In your printing things, you can't make subtle adjustments. You have to go redo passes, as you're talking about. I wanted to answer the things you're moving away from, things you're wanting to do more from my perspective a little bit, which is that, I've been traveling for the last 15 months without a fixed address, which has been great. And I'm gonna Airbnb, or actually found it through Airbnb, but it turns out it's my friend's spot. I'm going to rent a spot in LA for a few months. And it's been really, I don't want to go super deep into it because I was thinking about trying to have Tyler on again or have more producer talk, but it's been really interesting and really challenging, as I've talked about on some of these lives, moving from city to city, different studio setups, headphones, trying to find solutions for getting rooms that sound good, knowing what I'm hearing. The challenge of it is part of the reason I've been doing it, because I want to push myself out of the comfort zone. I'm not primarily a mix engineer, although I'm delivering mixes and doing that sort of thing. I really love the process of getting out of my comfort zone, writing new things, producing new things, trying new things in different environments. I am excited to be in one place for like 3 or 4 months, where I'm going to have, my PMCs in a room that I'm going to get very used to, that's already tuned up with all my synths and all my vintage guitars and my 67s, which I bought. I bought a pair of 67s a couple of months ago. I have not used them yet. As we're saying on the Discord, the only people that have used them since I purchased them, it's only been used by Grammy-winning engineers and artists, because Kian's using them to record new St. Vincent right now. So he's using my 47 and my 67 pairs. So they're our 67 pair, but they're getting good use. But I'm excited to like have my gear, have my spot, and kind of take the things I've learned from the last year of running around and that like manic thing of like, I don't have all my gear. What's the quick solution? Doing writing camps where it's like, cool, we have nothing, and 6 hours later, we're going to have a fully produced written song, and just the mad pace of all of that. I'm going to take that into this environment where I'm going to have a studio in the house, and I'm just going to live there and go crazy and occasionally drink champagne with Jon when he comes by.
I was just
let's go.
Coming through with a bottle of champagne. Yeah.
And really try to kind of hybridize the things I've done in the last year or so, plus having an environment that's consistent. There was somebody that asked a question, I don't know if it was in the Discord, about how do you make things, like how would Jon make things sound as good as he does at his level with an imperfect setup? And I don't know, there's a long answer to that. I
have an imperfect setup.
I have a
very
setup is
very imperfect setup.
Most of it is you just get used to something. Consistency is hugely important, and nobody has a perfect sounding room. Maybe some of the most crazy master engineers, they tune a certain way, but even there's preferences on that, because I know that like Rory likes hearing stuff with a little bit of Rory and Spider like things with a little more low end boost, which isn't an exactly even frequency response for a room. There's lots of ways to do it. And the biggest thing, which I've been missing in the last 15 months, is a consistent space to work. And there's something really great about that, of just, cool, I have a thing, here's my chain, everything's locked in, that's the guitar sound, it's already going through these compressors, the piano's mic'd up, all this kind of stuff is just like dialed in and ready to go. So that's for me the next 3 or 4 months is I'm going to have one spot. I'm going to hopefully do a couple of larger projects where we can really dig in and go for multiple weeks and write songs and produce. I'm going to obviously do one-offs. I'll do more mixing. But for me, that's the big change coming up in the next 3 or 4 months. And you're definitely invited. You should definitely come over.
Love that.
Oh,
I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I'll be there. Let's touch on the imperfect room for a minute, because I just discovered a new tool that it's not a new tool, but I had a cool hang with one of the developers at Isotope for Ozone the other day. He came over and he showed me the tonal balance control plugin. That's basically like a meter that you can see. Sorry, my hair is in my eye and it's annoying me. You can see like the ideal, quote unquote, frequency response is in a tunnel that they give you. It's called the fine mode. And I could see that my low end was like out off the charts. It's like, maybe it was too much low end. It's working. It's fine. But they have a curve that's like basically AI analyze like a lot of mixes, a lot of like working mixes. You can also import curves of the songs you like. Like I like 24 Karat Magic. So we use their audio lens plugin to take 24 Karat Magic in and see the curve and then match it to that curve and like see where the high mid excitement's coming from in that mix and whatever. And I think that's something that you can do when you're in an imperfect room or a new room for you. You get there, you play your references, and you just get a quick visual of what's happening and what you like. And I never do that. I don't really reference. I don't really look at meters except for loudness, for example, just to match people's roughs or where I think that things can be delivered. But I thought that this tool would be helpful to mention on today's episode because the tonal balance
control. Is it its own plugin or is it like within Ozone or something? Oh, it's its own plugin.
Yeah, tonal balance control too. It's its own plugin.
Gives you intense
and it's a cool meter
options of what things look like.
It looks like a line, like starts up high, low end, and then it just dips, off. And like, on this mix I was doing yesterday, I saw a pretty large boost at 1500 hertz, and like, it did sound a little bit much there. And I like found where it was and dipped it. I like the mix better. It helped a little bit. It's definitely for imperfect rooms. And I think that's very, very important to consider. I've never felt that way about a graphic EQ meter, that's what really helps me dial this in. There's something about the way that this meter works for my workflow that I think is very helpful. It's fluid. It doesn't have like spikes. It's constantly moving and adapting. And then there's this glowing line in between that is there. Hey, this is a perfect mix, or this is what the average of most mixes out there are doing, whatever they're calculating, whatever algorithm. And I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah. So what is that? Where does that middle line come from? Do you know?
And he might have explained it to me. We talked about a lot. I think it's an average of maybe multi-genres of music where the curves seem to lie, right? I'm sure we could find that out. It's probably on their website. What I thought was cool is that you could match a curve. Now, where I think it goes off the rails, and I don't like it at all because he demoed it, and I was like, that sounds terrible, is the auto master match, the master match setting in Ozone, where you can capture the curve of 24 karat match. We did this. We captured the curve, and then we did master match in Ozone. It brings up all an exciter and an imager and a thing, and it's not fucking terrible. Like to match the song, his demo to that, it was just like an acoustic folk song, and then I was like, oh, why is it so bright? It sounded terrible. I would never use that functionality. Maybe you dial it back and dial in some sort of preset from it to get a starting place. It was awful. But the visual aspect of what mixes that you like look like, and then seemingly adjusting towards that, I think will be very helpful for people that are at a certain level with their ears, their arrangements, and you're not comparing, Travis Scott Sicko Mode to like St. Vincent. Let's have a reference point that is like they're applicable here. And someone's talking about Audio Lens. That's what I'm talking about. I just mentioned that. So if you take Audio Lens, you could bring in any audio file from anywhere. It reads the Spotify output. You can just press play on Spotify with Audio Lens open. It'll find that. You can save that as the curve and then open that up in tonal balance.
Interesting. So it gives you some sort of visual comparison, visual ABs, which can be useful.
And I would say for someone like you who understands arrangement, what a good mix sounds like, you have a reference playlist. When you get to a new room, you should spend a half hour doing that. That's what I would do if I was going to mix in another room. I think it's very helpful. It's the first time I've noticed a meter that seems usable.
Well, it's funny,
for this exact application.
Back in the Eric Valentine days at Barefoot, he always had a real-time analyzer, not one of the digital ones, one of the old school analog ones. And he would buy extra ones because, they're old and had little LEDs. And those I actually found the most useful. The digital ones never quite sounded right to me. The response didn't feel right. So I used to have real-time analyzers, and super useful. If you start mixing with your eyes, you're going to get in trouble. But if you're trying to solve, it's sort of like, I don't know, the rules of songwriting. If you go in and be like, all right, the chorus needs to lift and each section should start on a different beat of the vocal and the cadence should, if you start doing that writing songs, you're never going to write a transcendently great culture-changing song. But if you need to solve a problem, understanding what these various tools and rules and things do, that's where you have 9,000 ways to make a vocal sound clearer in a chorus, and you don't sit there thinking about each one when you bring up a song. But when you run into problems, you file through those, the tools in your brain, or you have plug-in tools or analyzer tools. So I think those things can be super useful. I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, noticing noticing great accidents is its own.
Yeah, letting things come as they come. Let's see. There's one or two other little things. There's sort of like some random little practical questions. This one we haven't talked about in a while. Avaya asked, "Do you ever feel imposter syndrome at this point in your career?" Yeah, I
every day.
Yeah,
I just lost a huge project, and I'm like, "Do I suck?"
Yeah.
Obviously, I
feel it all the time.
Like, obviously.
And don't take it from us. I encourage everyone who hasn't. It's not a super well. I mean, actually, a lot of people gave a lot of great feedback. But I talked to Peter Asher on one of these lives. People should go watch that one. He's a guy who's multiple Grammys for Producer of the Year. He was an artist, had #1 records. He managed and found James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt and produced their records, and is just like a total legend. And he's like in his late 70s. And at some point in the conversation, we asked about imposter syndrome. He's like, "Yeah, I feel it every time I do a record." And the guy's been making records for 60 years, something like that, and had huge success. And he's like, "Yeah, I feel imposter syndrome every time I make anything. I don't." In the middle of the record, there's always a point where I go, "I don't know what we're doing. I don't know how we're going to get there." Like, maybe I don't know anything. And it's a total, you gotta.
Oh my God, the reverb, the scissor reverb made me feel so inadequate.
I constantly feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes I feel very competent too. Sometimes I feel, it's when I make something that's really great, which is a small percentage of the time where I'm like, this is done and this is amazing and I did this. I am equally like, holy shit, maybe I do know what I'm doing. This is awesome. And it's important to celebrate those things too. But the majority of the time, I'm working on things that don't feel finished and I don't know how they're going to get finished. And it makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I should have the answer. And it's really like 95% of the time I'm working on stuff, I'm just like, I don't know how it's going to get there. But it's like a weird meta-logical thing where I'm like, I've done this so many times. I know that I just need to keep doing this, take some breaks, listen on fresh ears, keep throwing ideas, not stress out about the fact that it's not finished and doesn't sound right to me yet. And if I just keep doing that of like pushing at it, taking breaks, listening to other things, just going back and forth, getting a good night's sleep, at some point it will be finished because I've done it hundreds of times of like finishing, I think, a pretty good sounding recording or mixed or whatever, but I don't know how it's going to get there. And I feel like an imposter every time I'm working on anything.
Yeah, but there's a success memory that that
100%. Well, that's what I'm saying.
So that must
I have
keep
to do
you
this
going.
meta thing where like, I know my brain doesn't think it's ever going to get finished and I hate what I'm doing, but I also really enjoy this crazy challenge and I know that it's going to get done and I know that it will be fine. Logically. But emotionally, I'm in it and I'm just like...
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I impress myself with how fast things can get done because I get asked to do something and my first thought is, oh no, how am I going to do that? And then in less than 10 seconds, the idea is complete and the person in the room's like, oh yeah, it's great. Sounds great. Okay. I'm like, oh, whoa, I just was guessing and I'm glad I guessed right. But you're guessing right based on previous successes. That's why there's this memory at play. And I think that's what we should, something about reflecting on the year, I would like to add that I really hope for more attended sessions next year, because what I'm talking about is kind of amended or fixed or mitigated in the collaborative process with other people, simply saying what you just did was right. So you're not in your head, this is unfinished, this idea isn't good enough. It's like someone validated it. You're like, oh, okay, I think it's cool too. Do we have to go further? No, it's tight. Okay. Like that feedback in the room is how things have been made for so long. I miss that. And I've had that a few times at the end of this year and I really like it. So I hope to do more.
Well, this is fundamentally a topic that we've touched on a number of times. Should you specialize? Should you do one thing or should you do the other? I can't stand not collaborating and getting feedback like all the time. I go nuts. And you have a stronger will than I do, but everybody needs some amount of collaboration. And like you said, when there's people in the room, there's just a different kind, whether you're mixing, even though I imagine mastering engineers, I don't know, I have to talk to some more, but like as a producer or writer, primarily being in the room is everything to me. I mean, I like being by myself and tweaking out on sounds and just making weird things, but like the crux of this thing is being with other people and bouncing things and getting that feedback. That's really important emotionally for me, and I need that all the time. So I totally feel you. And coming out of all this, pandy wandy stuff, I think that it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think so. I think another topic of my conversation with Dale before we jumped on was how it's pretty noticeable to the people that know me closest that the creative control seeps out in different ways, like, you know, cooking for friends, hosting, curating evenings, you know, maybe writing some poetry. Like, there's other ways that I offer creative control to myself, because mixing isn't that, because that's not really the job. And I think that there is an overconfidence or a perception of overconfidence in mixers, that like the whole V1 thing, it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, like no notes, like that's just not how it's ever worked. So why? We can always go back to mix one. I'm not saying mix one wasn't perfect or right or whatever that the word would be, but the collaboration is what brings the best usually. So I want to relinquish creative control in most and all, if not all situations, and have the collaboration occur. And then I will find creative control in another aspect of my life. Mixing is not going to be the one where I put my foot down and say, I know what's best.
I think that's a beautiful way to end it. You're off on holiday the next few weeks, it sounds like.
Yeah, let's come back. I get back to LA on the 8th, so let's do the 10th if you're around.
Try to have a few other people on in the next couple of weeks as a sub for Jon. Have a happy rest of your holidays. Have a great New Year. I'm sure I'll talk to you offline. But
when do you get back to Los Angeles? When are you into this place?
So I'll be dialed in. I'll probably have made 8 or 10 songs by the time you get back to LA. Come on through with a bottle of champagne, baby. Let's go. 2023, here we come. Thank you guys for spending all the time this year participating and watching us, and especially the Discord, which has just gone totally crazy. And remember, we got show notes, we got YouTube. Just the idea is to just consume this however you can consume it, and appreciate everybody showing up and sharing and all that stuff. It's really great to see. Love you, Jon. Bye, guys.
Amazing. Love you.